Hi, as I sit here tonight, I sit in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And for the last few nights, this city and cities all across this country have been erupting. And they've been erupting because there is inequity and injustice in this nation. So tonight, as I lead this meditation, I lead our meditation for justice as well as peace. We've been meeting weekly to meditate, to see ourselves, those we love and need most, and our nation and the globe coming through this coronavirus. I've been on lockdown since the middle of March, and grateful to be able to be on lockdown, grateful to be able to work from home, grateful to be able to be paid still, and yet knowing so many on unemployment, knowing so many not able to work, and knowing so many who've had to be out there working, including my own two daughters out there as essential workers. And I know if I had to be out there, I'd have to be out there. But I've been able to be home. And so I've been leading these meditations as a gift, as a way for each of us, wherever we're at, to be able to focus and to bring down the tension and the fear, and to just fully believing in science, fully doing our best, knowing, I know, I live in Philadelphia, I teach in South Jersey, I know that this pandemic is real, and I know people affected by it, and I know many people who've gotten sick and recovered. I know some who've been mildly sick and a number who've been badly ill, and I know some who've died. So I know this pandemic is real, and I fully affirm science. I believe in wearing a mask. I believe in gloves and hand sanitizer and hand washing, and I encourage you to do all you can in the natural to keep you and yours safe. But also, I believe in our ability to create in our own lives, to meditate and calm ourselves. And also, I don't believe so much in the law of attraction as in the law of determination. There's something in the human being when we decide something will be so. We have incredible powers to bring those things to pass. So if as a collective, we visualize and put our energy towards seeing a successful end for the human race, successful, of the coronavirus, if we see this pandemic passing over us and the globe, we help to bring that about. I've written in my book about the law of determination. I've written about the problem of evil, and I've written about Hitler. And I've written about how when he determined that he would do evil, that he would rise to power, and that he would use that power to try to exterminate a people, that nothing stopped him till other people rose up with their determination to bring him to a halt. There's something about that strength and power of determining something that causes others of like mind to come to you and help bring something to pass. And so into this breach we step, using our collective energies to help determine the successful the way out of this pandemic. But tonight, even more is going on. There are more things to also determine and put our energies to in every way possible, to put our energies to politically and legally and with our voices and with our faith and with our love and with our understanding and with our intellectual growth. There are other things that need to be addressed, and clearly they're showing tonight around this country. So I also teach race and gender classes, and I have since 2004. I took my undergraduate degree and I did undergraduate minors in women's studies and in African American studies. And then I did graduate concentrations in race and ethnicity and gender and sexuality, and also in women's studies. And so these are the topics that I teach on and the topics that I believe in. I have, one of my books is on a history, the marriage equality movement, but it is about, it contains a history of social movements in the United States. And I did my dissertation on the LGBT social movement. So I am a social movement scholar as a PhD in this topic. And this is, there are real things happening here. Even as the virus is real, and I fully affirm the science in regard to the virus, even as a person of faith, that I believe that our collective energy also can have a positive effect. I also know, as a race and gender scholar and a social movement scholar, that what's happening here is happening for very, very real reasons. Things changed in the United States any number of times, but in an abbreviated sense of social movement studies, there are the movements of the mid-20th century. There is the civil rights movement, which doesn't just begin in the 1950s, but we'll start from there. In the 50s and the 60s, there's the movement for racial civil rights, for Black civil rights in the United States. And there are real effects that take place. I spent part of today listening to some footage that's maybe 6 years old, of John Lewis, of Congressman John Lewis, talking about the civil rights movement, his role in it, but also the effects, the very real effects that it had on American life and that it has had in the decades since on. And while never have things been all better yet, they're not all better yet in regard to race or gender or class or any other thing that we bring to the table, but there was real change made. There was real change made in the mid-20th century for women's rights. There's been real change made for LGBT rights across this length of time. There's been real change made for Americans with disabilities. There's been real change, but other changes happened. With forward motion, there is backlash. And you could read Susan Faludi's Backlash. I often cite her, and I don't know why that book didn't have all of the effect of Betty Friedan's Feminine Mystique, but there's real backlash that came into play. So as we get through the 50s and the 60s, we get changes. And as we get through the 70s, and then as we come into the 80s, there begins to be a rhetoric in the United States from politicians about law and order and about a war on drugs. And that rhetoric of that war on drugs and that rhetoric about law and order becomes a war on Black communities all across this country. It becomes no-knock warrants. That's an oxymoron. No-knock warrant. If you're serving me a warrant, you've got to knock and say your name. You have to identify that you're the police, and I have a right to see a badge. I have a right to know that you're not faking it and that you actually have a warrant. That's part of a constitutional right. Yet there's this something that comes in with this war on drugs where rights can be taken away and property can be seized and without trial, some things, and just lots, there's so many things. And so we go from, and there's a long history, there's enslavement and then there's peonage, and then we get into this space of mass incarceration so that there are more Black men in prison because of a war on drugs. In large measure, an overwhelming measure, the prisons are full of nonviolent offenders. And so this something that begins to affect the Black community also affects the way policing is done in the United States. And so these two, we see them coming together in the murder in front of our own eyes of George Floyd. We see them coming together in that way. And that has erupted this rage. at this continuing, ongoing injustice. I won't go into the kind of depth I would go into in a class about the murder of Michael Brown, or the research that I did at that point in time about the history of the murder of unarmed people of color in this country. And it includes, in my part of the United States, it includes a large number of African Americans as well as Latinx people, but it also, in other parts of the country, it includes even more numbers of those who are Latino or Latina or Latinx. It includes, so there's just this ongoing situation that has gotten worse and worse and deeper and deeper. And so as I began to look when Michael Brown was murdered and look at this history, there's this history of killing people who are clearly unarmed. Most of them men, some of them women, almost all of them people of color. The few white people I found in those situations were generally cognitively disabled in some way, but almost overwhelmingly men of color, women of color, and sometimes very old women, and sometimes very young people. Tamir Rice was 12, playing with a toy gun. And if you watch that film footage, he was shot before the police officer opened his car door. He's killed just through the window, just wiped out. Just a child, an absolute child. There's another case, and the name escapes me right now, of a young girl sleeping on the couch by her grandmother, maybe a great-grandmother. It was an older person and a woman in her family, and the police break in and she's shot. And then they blame the grandmother for, like, you tried to reach for my gun. So there's just this, there's people who were told to show their ID. And in the film footage, you're like watching the man say, I have to reach for my wallet now. And if you want my license, I'm going to reach for my wallet now. And then as soon as his hand touches the wallet, he's accused of having a gun, of the wallet being a gun, when he just said, that's my wallet and my license is it. And then he's shot. There's just case after case after case after case. I ended up with this enormous PowerPoint, and where till I in my white privilege couldn't take anymore, and stopped at that point collecting names and pictures and details. But almost never have any of the police officers been charged or even fired. Often put on desk duty while it was internally reviewed, but a paid leave or a paid desk duty. But then just, I was scared. And I'm not saying that policing's not a hard job and a scary job. But if someone's restrained, George Floyd was in handcuffs. You can't really resist arrest once you're handcuffed. Once you're cuffed, you can be tossed in the back of the squad car, especially by 4 officers. So to have to kneel on someone's neck or spine when they're already cuffed, and he had no weapon. He was accused of, one story I heard was a check, but I think the more reliable story was passing a counterfeit, was somebody thought his 20 was a counterfeit, but it wasn't. But he was taken from his car peacefully without there's cop video footage of the police officer video footage of that, taken out of his car and handcuffed and being walked with his arms behind his back. And then the police cameras are turned off. And then he's on the ground. And the next footage we have is from a 17-year-old girl who refused to put her cell phone down. There's real reasons for what's going on. And there may be others, there are people who may be stirring it up and making things go from protest to looting, whatever all that is. But tonight, as we meditate, let us meditate not only on our own personal safety from coronavirus and our own successful way forward with whatever this means in regard to the finances that we all, most of us listening, are not very wealthy. And so whatever it means as the world hits a global depression in response to this pandemic, but also for the real injustice that's going on, for an end to that injustice, and for justice for George Floyd, for his family, which doesn't ever bring someone back, but an end to the murder of unarmed American citizens and civilians who are not citizens but sought asylum. Let's really visualize for an end to these kinds of injustices, for a change in our leadership and in our public policies. If we, as a nation of people, disapprove, if we disapprove of racial profiling, we were beginning to disapprove. Certainly, there was a fight against police brutality in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 60s, 70s, of which I was aware. And certainly there was resistance to the idea of profiling people by race in the 90s. And then the World Trade Towers, planes flew into them, they fell, and it became acceptable to profile. And with that acceptability, there's like no one questioning the murder of people who are not armed. When someone is not armed, even Michael Brown, who was shot in the back as he's walking away, if someone is walking away and that's a resisting arrest, you don't have to kill them. You know, you could shoot them in the leg or something. There's just, in each of the videos I've had the misfortune of watching, there was something else to be done. And so serving and protecting. And we saw today the picture, I believe it was Orlando, Florida, but forgive me if I got this city wrong. But we saw a picture of police officers wearing their face masks for coronavirus, kneeling, like Colin Kaepernick did, kneeling for George Floyd. And so there are good police officers, but no one should be shot in an execution by police officers either. So let us visualize for the changes that we can see that we need, and let us add our energies, our determination to see America live up to the creeds we've never achieved, those creeds of liberty and justice for all. And remember, there's two kinds of justice. The Bible talks about doing justice, judgment, and righteousness. And it talks about that as feeding the widow and the orphan. There's the justice of doing equality. And then there's the justice of punishment, but punitiveness is not the only justice. So let us go into that space, just allowing yourself to take a seat, to let your body be physically comfortable in whatever way, to sit, to lie down, to close your eyes, and to become mindful of your breath as I close my eyes and lead us into that place. Visualize with me tonight. Allow yourself to be aware of your breath. And as you are aware of your breathing, let your breath deepen and slow. With each breath, allow yourself to simply release all the fear and all of the tension. And allow yourself, if you are justly angry at injustice, allow yourself to know that even with that righteous anger, you can still let your body relax enough to focus your mind, your thoughts your will and your emotions on our desired end result. So let yourself breathe in a sense of peace and breathe away tension as you bring your awareness to visualizing and creating justice. So for just a moment, allow yourself to relax your forehead and your face, the muscles of your neck and your shoulders. Bring your awareness to the muscles of your back and your arms. And if you are blessed and fortunate enough tonight to be, or as you join with this meditation, whatever time of day, if you're fortunate enough to have clear breathing, then take a moment to be grateful, to be able to breathe and breathe deeply. If instead you are struggling to recover from COVID-19 or in some other way struggling with the ability to breathe, then let yourself breathe as deeply as you can and allow yourself to relax as best you can, drawing that sense of peace down from your bronchial tubes into your lungs and then down into your abdomen, into the region of your solar plexus and your lower torso, down deeply into your legs, your knees, your calves, your feet. You're just letting go. And you're letting yourself be grounded and centered. And in this space, we take a moment to bring to our mind's eye the words of the Declaration of Independence, those words that are the shining ideal of the America we want to see. At the time Jefferson penned them, they were not true. As we sit here tonight, they're not yet true, but we sit here tonight after more than 150 years of struggle by various peoples to press into those words to make them true. And so turn your attention to create an image of what an America looks like, what a United States of America looks like, where there is liberty and justice for all, where overwhelmingly we each believe that we all are created equal, that we all, if we believe in a creator, that we are all endowed by that creator with inalienable rights. See that America, and in that America, many things are there. Everyone has access to health care in that America, and access to education in that America. In that America, everyone has the ability to walk or travel in a way in which they are not afraid of being unjustly stopped or murdered by law officers who are there to support and defend the law. For it's not legal to violate the rights of American citizens or civilians on our soil. And so in that America, there is no war on any community. In that America, there is a path to citizenship or asylum and citizenship for immigrants. In that America, dreamers get a path to citizenship too. In that America, there are no concentration camps where children are taken from their parents and put in cages. In that America, no unarmed person who is actually not resisting arrest. Even if, and George Floyd was not being this, but even if they're talking back, there's no one shot, lynched, extrajudicially on the streets in that America, or in their homes. In that America, the justice system works, and it works equally for all. And all who need to call the police feel comfortable being able to do so, knowing that situations will not be escalated by law enforcement, but diffused and handled. In that America, there is a social norm of civility from the police and to the police. Feel the feeling of having quality leadership, politicians who are true servants of the people at every level, local, state, national, every level, see corruption removed and see honest, honorable servants of the people rising to the fore and rising into and filling the positions of authority in this country. See each leader holding their authority wisely, holding their power respectfully, holding the ideals of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution in honor, living their lives with a recognition that they want to leave a legacy of service and righteousness and honor. And see in that America cities where there is no unrest, where the social contract is not violated at any level by those who have risen to not power but to authority, and where it's not violated by those who are lower on that hierarchical totem pole. See a shift, a change. See an America in which greed is not king or queen, an America in which we live for more than simply dying with the most toys, because the one who dies with the most toys wins nothing and leaves it behind. When we leave it behind. And so we live our lives in this America, all of us, all 312 million of us, live our lives with an eye to the future. And we changed in this America, the system is changed so that the environment is cared for, so that every change possible to honor and protect our soil, our air, our water, to reverse climate change, every possible measure is taken, is enacted. See in America and a world in which people do not make it harder for each other or for the survival of our species and so many other species. Feel the feeling of living in a place where there is liberty, justice, and wisdom, and where we each work collectively toward the good of all, where we hold those ideals, where those ideals guide us, where that is our worldview, where our goal is not to be a billionaire, but to be loved most, by those who know us best, to be someone who loves and who serves, to be wealthy in many ways, to have all that we need in shelter, food, and clothing, but also in love and community and affection and respect. Feel the feeling of that America. And it is an America in which there is racial justice and equity, in which there is gender justice and equity. It is an America in which there is an equitable distribution of wealth, in which there is not an enormous divide, where the wealthiest 3 do not have more money than the entire bottom 50%. An America where you can afford your home, your food, your clothing. An America where you have all that you need in every level, and where all have all that they need. So we visualize, we create, we daydream and envision that America, that globe. And tonight we see also, we see the best, swiftest, safest, and most effective treatments and vaccine to end this pandemic. We see an end. We see a day when we can again go out, at least when we don't have an ordinary flu. We can go out without a mask, and we can go out and hug and be with those we love, not just when quarantine has been broken while the numbers still rise, but in America where the pandemic has truly, and a globe, a world where the pandemic has passed over and ended. An end to pestilence, an end to the kind of climate change that increases plagues and pandemics, an end to the kind of climate change that's brought locusts to Africa. We see an end to the kind of colonial legacy inequity that has left billions in this world living on less than $2 or $1 a day. We see justice, equity, equality, caring for one another. And we also take a moment to see our own households, bringing the lens back into you and yours. See you and those you love and need most, your friends, your family, your loved ones, still standing, whole, well, strong, recovered at the end of this all, with your financial footing sound, with enough food, shelter, clothing, with strength and health. And so tonight, we call in spirit for the stage of human history to be swept clean of this pandemic, to be swept clean of corruption and injustice and greed. And we call for a new vision to catch on and spread everywhere, a vision of actual, honest equity, liberty, justice, equality for all. So again, feel the feeling of being healthy and well. If you are struggling or have struggled, feel the feeling of recovery, full, complete, total recovery, strength and health in your body, a renewal of youth and abilities, and also hold that vision, the stage of human history. See the leaders who have risen into positions of authority, holding that authority with honor, being those who are there to serve others and while duly compensated, not there to get wealthy at the destitution of others, an end to unjust immiseration and undeserved enrichment. See in this space a future and a hope. So allow yourself tonight to see yourself, your own people, surrounded with a force field of energetic light that keeps you and yours safe and well, bringing you through. Renew your commitment to do that which is wise in the natural, to follow the science. Renew your commitment to do all that you can in the realm of voting and speaking up, writing, reaching out, clicking on the right links, virtually demonstrating. See yourself joining in, calling for justice. Add your voice, however you are embodied, however you are sexed or raced or classed. See yourself contributing to the shift. And then see that shift. Even as the Allied forces rose up and defeated Nazism and fascism, see a shift, see a change, see America coming into a place not only of a locked down kind of peace, but of a true peace built on a foundation of justice. The foundation of justice our real leaders laid for us as they fought in our social movements. Not only the Martin Luther Kings, but all the unnamed women and men of that movement and of the women's movement. Larry Kramer, who died this past Wednesday, 84 years old, who led the fight against, helped lead the fight against AIDS and the HIV pandemic, who helped found ACT UP and the gay men's health crisis. See truth, equity, justice, change, real leadership, honor. The future is ours, and the best is yet to be. Hold the vision, make it plain, run with it. Until next time, be blessed.